Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show video for you guys, and today I'm going to be updating my top 50 players in the game. We are getting towards the end of set 3. We have most of our postseason content out of the way, other than like World Series stuff. And I think we'll get ranked updates somewhat soon after I post this video. But in general, this is more or less going to be the layout for the rest of season 3. So hopefully you guys enjoy. If it does help you with building your lineups, putting your squad together, like and subscribe. We'll be here all year. All right, so first card up, Aaron Bummer. If you're new to the top 50s, if I think a pitcher isn't universally top 50, I just put them in my pitchers tier, which means they're really good. And depending on like what difficulty you're on and what type of players you're playing up against, maybe you should consider using them. But they're not going to be for everybody, and they're not universally a top 50 card. There's very few pitchers that I think earn the moniker of a top 50 card. Soriano, he's probably in this like top 30 to top 20 range. One of the best second basemen you can run. He is a primary righty and his clutch is not great, but other than that, he's almost a perfect card. If you put him on like the O'Neill Cruz boost, he is basically a perfect card. But this is without ranking captain boost. Outlier, he would be close to maybe cracking the top 50 if it was more of like a Hall of Fame legend list, but it's not. You got to think of All-Star, and on All-Star, he's basically BP. Kutch is probably like top 30. Obviously, this is not my final ranking. We're just kind of ballparking, guys. I don't really usually mock up these videos and go through a whole list before I start. Chapman, probably in one of these tiers. He's not as dominant as Chapman from the past, but still kind of has that career tribute mix where he throws every pitch he's ever thrown. Still a scary guy. Still has outlier. Babe Ruth, still a top 10 card. Still probably the best first baseman in the game. Bo Bichette, this card is insane on the Cruz boost. I'm not like a huge fan of his swing in general, but max contact, really good power left, very decent power right, and then max out clutch. With crazy fielding. Like, this is a crazy card. It just comes down to how much you like his swing. I don't like it enough for it to be a top 20 card in the game for me. He's also only a primary shortstop, I believe. So you cannot run him at like second base or something. It's really up to how much you like his swing. His swing's kind of like similar to like a Xander Bogaerts or somebody like that. So if you typically enjoy those type of swings, then you'll probably love that card. Dozier, definitely towards the bottom of the list. Maybe he like cracks top 40, but I don't think he's like insane. Rayleigh, a good little universal lefty. He's really hard to hit lefty, but what I value out of the pen from my lefty bullpen pitchers is, can you pitch to righties with them? Now, I'm not saying to have all guys in your bullpen that are like that, but in general, every lefty at bat's going to be hard and it's going to be miserable. So do you feel comfortable pitching with righties with that lefty? And to me, not really. So I think he's a jag. He's just a guy. Bruzdar, never been a huge fan of him. Definitely not top 50. I don't know what I was doing. Another guy where if you need a longer lever that has outlier, he can be somebody that fits that role, but not one of my favorite cards to do that. Buck O'Neill, contact hitting first baseman. Not my favorite archetype in the world. Duvall, another guy. You get to Hall of Fame, you get to Legend, especially. Maybe he does have an argument for top 50, but on lower difficulties, not really. Cedric, probably towards his back end. Really good swing. The swing's awesome. Nobody's debating that. But the problem is you're going to be hitting off Randy and John almost every game, and these contact numbers really aren't it at this point. This power number really ain't it. He's really just here as charity to his swing. His swing's absolutely carrying him. Him and Dozier are basically opposite cards. This Blackmon card, I think he's similar, if not better, than this Andrew McCutcheon's. Statistically, he is better. 125 contact, 98 power left, 116 right, max out clutch. And he's not a terrible fielder like most Blackmons are. He is the primary center fielder, so that kind of takes away from him a little bit and adds to McCutcheon. So McCutcheon's definitely way better defensively. And you got to think McCutcheon is going to be hitting off John and Randy, where he has really good hits and really good power. And Blackmon's going to have to lefty a lot of the time this season. So I think that kind of brings him down to earth. Charlie Blackmon again, this time as a pitcher. He's fine. He has Josh Hader release with the 5-pitch mix, which is definitely solid, but I don't think it's top 50 worthy. Utley, I would definitely rather have Utley other than Brian Dozier, but he's definitely not, I don't think, top 3 at second base for me personally. The new Kershaw, statistically a good card. If you haven't used Kershaw at all this year, you're not really going to know that his pinpoint out of the stretch is pretty brutal. It's one of the faster ones in the game. And if you're using them on Hall of Fame and Legend, where he's really going to excel at, it's going to be hard for you to throw a perfect pitch with him every time. He's going to hang some really important pitches on really high difficulties, where the more you throw down the middle, the more chance you're going to lose the game by a ton. So not really a card I would recommend, but if you really want to use a Kershaw, then he is there. Bellinger, close to a top 10 card, obviously has a great swing, doesn't struggle a ton lefty-lefty, like it's definitely doable with him. He has good quirks. The problem is his contact left is a little low. When you talk about top 10 card, I'm thinking guys that excel on Hall of Fame, are usable on Legend, and are just gods on All-Star. And I don't think he's quite good enough. Like when you're playing on Hall of Fame and Legend with 103 contact left, and you're hitting off, like I said, John and Randy, and then the ton of good lefties out the bullpen, it's not my favorite card in the world, but he is still very, very good. Bellinger's always extremely good in the game. Cole Reagan's just another pitcher that's, worth mentioning, but not top 50 worthy. Seager, if he could play second base, I would take him at second base over Brian Dozier. Even then, though, I basically view him as equivalent to Utley. Their stats are fairly similar, and Seager's probably got the better swing. If you remember how crazy the live series Seager was at the start of the year, if you really like that Seager and you've put some mean parallels on him, you could definitely still run him. Biggio, I think he's a top 40 card. He goes a free card. A lot of people have him. Has a really nice swing. And he might even be a top 30 card. David Fry, absolutely love his swing. Think he has a very underrated swing. This card's very solid. He doesn't really excel at anything. You can see 117, 107, 116, 112, 117 clutch. But he plays catcher. As a first baseman, maybe not the most eye-popping card in the world. But as a catcher, relatively good. David Wright, unfortunately, I think he's a top 30 card for me. Statistically, he probably should be a top 20 card. He's very similar to he's like if the Hall of Fame Adrian Beltre had Derek Jeter swing. But unfortunately, I just never really get along great with David Wright cards. In theory, in the meta, 125, 119 against lefties should absolutely smack. And then maxed out clutch if you put some parallels on him. And supposedly great defense, but I have seen him be kind of suspect at third. I think he's a top 30 card. I don't think I can rate him as a top 20 card. Eckersley, a guy that's worth mentioning. If you're on Hall of Fame, if you're on Legend, he can give you some good innings. Would not pitch him if you're on All-Star. Eddie Murray, very solid card. Good switch hitting first baseman. If you value switch hitting, or if you're using the Santana team, that probably elevates him in your mind. But he does have a nice swing, and he is a switch hitter with decent stats. They're not awesome. Kike, very similar to Biggio and Utley, I would say, where he's definitely better than Brian Dozier at second base, but overall not my favorite card in the world. He does have a nice swing. His gold and co-op is really good. 102, 112, 93, 122. So statistically, kind of worse than Dozier, but if you give me the choice between these two, I'm running Kike every single day. Gagne, another guy. He's not everybody's cup of tea. I don't love Eric Gagne cards. It feels like you're just using him for the difference between the outlier fastball and that eephus curveball that's 68. And once you get past that gimmick, he's just not that hard to hit. Ernie Banks, probably close to a top 10 card. I think he's top 20 with chances to move up. But he's not really my first choice at shortstop at this point. Fergie, really good. One of the few guys in the game without outlier that can get swings and misses on All-Star because he has that really slow fork ball. He's running up a fastball like 97, 98, and then a forkball like 78, 76. So one of the few guys that can get swings and misses on All-Star without outlier. Gets even better on Hall of Fame. Probably not that great on Legend just because through nines kind of let him down. But other than that, very solid card. This Tatis, I view him as similar to Soriano. Maybe he should go down a tier. It just kind of depends. For me, his best position is second base, but I believe he can also play third, short, and every outfield spot. So a very versatile card. This Lindor, top 10 card easily. Everybody loved the season awards one that we got. This one's an even better version of that. Crazy power on him, better contact than the season award. Maxed out clutch, slightly better defense, I believe, than the season awards card, and he's slightly faster. So this is just an upgraded version of that season awards card. If you enjoyed that card, you were going to absolutely love this card. Springer Dinger, he's okay. He's straight. He's not a bad option. Statistically, he's more or less in line with like McCutchen. The clutch is decent at 110, 121, 109, 121, 114. Similar to McCutchen, more of a corner guy, not really fast enough, not with good enough reactions or defense to necessarily justify playing him in center field. But if you put him in a corner and you really like his swing, definitely has an argument to be out there. This Stanton card, pure DH. I think for that reason, I don't think he's higher in top 30. I think you got to look at kind of like real life where, there's a ton of people that can DH. The real value is being a 5-tool player and being able to play the field. And this card can't. But he is going to mash. 122, 118, 125, 125, 125. So as far as just being a DH goes and just hitting balls a long way, he's going to be really good at it. But you are borderline suicidal if you are playing him in the field. Not going to be a fun time. Playbot, he's okay. He's straight. I think he's definitely a tier under like Soriano and stuff. I think I view him similar to like Kike, Utley, and Biggio. I think this is kind of a good tier for him, more or less. 116, 121, 105, 93 with 120 clutch. Not the greatest fielder, and he's not nearly as fast as these other guys, but, he brings different things to the table. Soto, Gregory Soto, I should be more specific. We have a couple Sotos now. He's cool. He's straight. If you like the Gregory Sotos that we've had in previous years, you'll probably like this one. The only thing I will mention is his pinpoints really sped up. It's somewhat hard to pitch with him. You have to sit there and watch the pinpoint wheel go around. And if you're on a bad server, then it's going to be even worse trying to pitch with him. But in general, still a super usable card. Still really hard to hit lefty-lefty, and one of those premium lefty relievers that can pitch to righties somewhat effectively. Hank Aaron, still a really good card. Still absolutely rakes. Still has that first base secondary. Still, towards the top of the meta. Jackie, been saying it. Basically, same card as Biggio. It's really just a matter of whose swing do you like more. Me personally, it's Biggio. But statistically, they are very similar cards to one another. DeGrom, one of the few pitchers I am going to put in this top 50. I think he's just going to creak in. I think he's better than like all the starters here, no matter your difficulty. I think he's going to pitch really well on All-Star, really well on Hall of Fame, and really well on Legend, but not necessarily dominant on any of them. I think he should be in everybody's rotation, but I can't promise you, unlike our top two guys, that he's going to go out there and pitch a gem and give you a better chance to win the game than like other pitchers would. Big John Kinsey, absolute dog. Really, this card kind of depends on your prior experience. If you use that season awards one and liked him, you're going to like this one. It's just a slight upgrade. He's better in the field, but the hitting is more or less the same. So it just kind of depends on how you like the other one. Joe Torre, I figured it was worth mentioning. Always has a really good swing. The problem is always his power. He doesn't make the Cruise team. I don't think he makes like the Carroll team or anything like that. But he just has a really good swing with some really good quirks. And if you are curious what having high vision and high contact and good quirks can do for a card, try out this Joe Torre. He had a different card earlier in the year that had like 60 power. I think it was a Team Affinity card. Absolutely raked. So imagine what he'll do with 100 power. Definitely not a bad option if you are on a budget, or if you just have him from, you know, playing ranked enough, then definitely not a bad card. John, I think I'll put John in the top 10. By far the best pitcher in MLB The Show history, or at least stuff-wise it is. Like, yeah, he doesn't have 125 hits. Yeah, he doesn't have 110 walks. Yeah, he doesn't have max out clutch. But he does have this. He has a 19-mile-an-hour velo differential. He's got kind of a janky release. He has an outlier slider, an outlier fastball. He throws a sinker. All he's really missing is a cutter. And when you're throwing a slider at 98 miles an hour, you don't really need a cutter. So John's him. He's the best pitcher in the game. And every time you see John, you know it's not necessarily going to be a fun time. John Franco, on the other hand, more of a gimmick guy, decent enough, a lefty that can somewhat pitch to righties out the pen just because of the screwball, but still not one of my favorites. Polanco, top 20 card for sure. Just him being in this top 20 might push Soriano and Tatis out of it, because when I'm looking at second baseman, I think Polanco's kind of the gold standard, and then these two are like the guys you run if you don't have Polanco. Jose Abreu, solid enough card. Nothing to complain about. He's decent at first base. He's not universal. I don't think everybody should be using Jose Abreu, but if you really enjoyed the Team Affinity one from the start of the year swing, then you'll probably really like that one. This Juan Soto, borderline top 10 card, has the same swing. His hitting stats are somewhat weird compared to the Derby one. I did look at them. I think this card has lower contact, I want to say, but like significantly better power. So it's really up to you as to what you value. More or less, they're the same defensively also. But the other one does make the cruise team. So if that's a tiebreaker for you, maybe it's worth going back and wildcarding that one. But in general, this Soto is still a really good card, really good swing, good quirks. It's always surprising just how amazing he is in game. Julio, I think me personally, I probably put him in this 40, but I think me being more objective, because I know there is people that really enjoy his swing, I think he's here. The contact's kind of low. He has inverse splits, I believe, also. No, he doesn't. He just hits righties better. So at least you have hand in this advantage. He has good clutch, and he's more or less one of the better defensive center fielders in the game. So not a bad option. Obviously gets a lot better on like the Carroll or the Cruz team. But he is still a pretty solid option. Lou Gehrig, I think he's probably top 10. He's very similar to Babe Ruth. If you don't have Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig is 95% of what Babe Ruth is. So I think that makes him a top 10 card for sure. If you don't have Ruth, you should probably be running Lou. But those lefty at bats are going to be kind of brutal. Simeon, very underwhelming for a BR reward. I think he's more or less along these lines of like Brian Dozier in terms of power scaling. I think I'd still rather have Biggio over him. I'd rather have Jackie over him. And then it's probably a toss-up between like Kike, Glaber, and Simeon. But I think I still take those others over him. Mark Vientos. This card's very nice. I do really enjoy his swing. I think he's up here. As to what version of Vientos you should use, I think it just depends on your difficulty. One of them has slightly better contact on average. One of them has slightly better power on average. If you're on All-Star, you probably want the power one. If you're on Hall of Fame Plus, you probably want the contact one. So just kind of keep that in mind. Did not want to put both of them on this tier list. Mickey, definitely up there. Potentially the best player in the game right now. Switch hitting, maxed out hitter, maxed outfielder. He's basically a perfect card. He's going to be in everybody's lineup for the rest of the year. If you are not getting your XP, you're doing yourself a disservice if you plan on playing for the rest of the year at all, or if you think maybe you'll come back before next year's game. I would urge you to get this card. They're doing double XP throughout the entire World Series. It should be a card that everybody that plays a little bit should have. Napoli, solid enough. I think he's very similar to David Fry. Wherever I put Fry at, there he is. Another first baseman that can play catcher, that has really good hitting stats. And some people enjoy his swing. For me personally, I'll take Fry over him. But I think it's 1A, 1B. I think they're very similar cards. Big Mike Trout, absolute stud. Honestly, probably my favorite card in the game right now. Just it's Mike Trout. He's always crazy. The quirks aren't insane on this card. He's only got Road Warrior and Day Player that really do a ton. No first pitch, no dead or red. But 113, 125, 110, 125, 125 clutch, and he is basically the best defensive center fielder in the game, assuming you put some parallels on him. If you put him on the Carroll team, if you put him on the Cruz team, he gets even better. For me personally, he's probably the best card in the game, in my opinion. Mitch Garver, definitely up here. I think he's probably a top 20 card. I think if you are not running a captain boost, or if you don't feel like you have to have like a switch hitter or something at catcher, then this Mitch Garver's the best catcher on paper statistically. When you look at him, he's almost a max out hitter. 125, this 102 against righties isn't ideal. That's like the one big problem with the card. But other than that, 125, 125, 125. He's not insanely slow, and he's not the worst defensive catcher in the world. Assuming you know how to manage base runners, he's still going to throw out runners. Just an absolute stud card. If you used the one earlier in the year and enjoyed him, you'll probably also like this one. This Castellanos card, I think this is a really slept on card. The live series / postseason version of Castellanos, significantly different swing to like that flashback one, the Cubs one we had earlier in the year. And I can say it is a lot better. He's an absolute stud. 108, 112, 117, 111, 116, but just not a good fielder. So this is a primary right fielder. So if you play him at third, if you play him at first, he's going to get even worse defensively, which isn't ideal. Does have really good quirks, does have a really good swing. I think he's worth mentioning, but I do kind of see that statistically he's not up to par with a lot of these guys on the list. It's really just a swing thing. It's a personal preference. That's kind of like my one veto. This Goldschmidt, I think he's a slightly better version of the Abreu. I think they're very similar cards. I think I'm going to drop Glaber. Or nah, probably Kike. His swing is really good, but the stats just aren't really there. This Goldschmidt, just an upgrade version of Abreu. It's just Abreu with similar stats. I think their swings are somewhat similar too. You know, he's a cool card to get from the extreme. He's not why you do the extreme, but 125, 116, 117, 107 with max out clutch. And he's a great fielder for what that matters at first base. And he's got dead red. So I think he's an upgraded Abreu. He's still a very solid option at first, but not somebody I'd say you have to have. Pedro, I think he could be in the similar boat to DeGrom, where you can make the argument that like he is that much better than all these other pitchers. But me personally, I don't really see it. They did change his mix. He is more similar to like a Paul Skeens now, more so than like Pedro of the past, but he's still not my favorite card in the world. Four seam, circle change, slider, sinker, slurve. Unpopular opinion, I enjoyed his old pitch mix with the cutter, the circle change, the curveball. Obviously, the curveball was a worthless pitch. So if you swap the curveball for a slurve, I think he would be one of my favorite pitchers in the game. But I don't really love the Paul Skeens mix personally. It's not my favorite. I think a slider and a slurve is kind of redundant unless it has really big speed gaps. PCA, very solid card. Sneaky outlier card. He's okay. He's fine. The control's going to struggle, especially when you get to higher difficulties, but he can definitely be the fifth man in your rotation, and you still have a really good rotation. This Randy, fine. Statistically, he's very similar to like McCutchen, Springer, even like J-Rod hitting-wise. This really just depends on how you feel about swing. 105, 110, 104, 115, max out clutch. And he's not a bad fielder at all. 85 reaction, 84 speed. And he's already a primary left fielder. So if you stick him in left, he should be above average probably defensively as a left fielder. But just not really that crazy of a card. Randy, I don't think makes top 10. I think he is top 20. People have just kind of gotten conditioned to seeing Randy Johnson. They know what you want to throw with him. They know what the common sequences are, what the tunnels are if you're doing tunnels. He's just not nearly as good as he used to be, but he's still way better than every other pitcher in the game, not named John Donaldson. So they're 1A, 1B for the best pitcher in the game. I think John's better for most people just because of the speed differential and the outlier slider. This Ricky card, bottom of top 50. I view him very similar to Cedric Mullins, where Mullins has way worse stats than Ricky. I think everybody can see that. Ricky just always has a trash swing. If somebody comes up to plate with Ricky Henderson and I have like Brusdar Gratterall or somebody else, another righty with an outlier sinker, I might just throw them 4 outlier sinkers in a row in on the hands. I'm not saying for a strike, but just in on the hands to make you swing at it, and then I'll probably work something away, maybe, if he's not out by that point. Just always has a trash swing, always crowds the plate. The home run celebration's epic. It always is. It's always one of the best in the game. But in general, not one of my favorite cards in the world. Riley Green, I think he probably cracks top 30. He's similar to Chapman. If I feel like if your opponent has, if their next 3 up is like a lefty, a righty, and another lefty, I feel good with Riley Green in that situation. I feel like he can get all 3 outs, where maybe you wouldn't want to bring in like Brooks Raley. Brooks Raley gets the lefty out, gives up a home run to the righty, gets the other lefty out, you're still in the inning. I feel like Riley Green, you bring him in, there's a good chance he gets all 3 out. Dibble, kind of like a, not gimmick pitcher, but he is like a one-trick pony, where if people aren't biting on the 4-seam and aren't rolling over on the cutter, then he's got nothing. And there's just really no in between. I've never found Dibble too hard to hit, but I know at lower ranks, people do struggle a lot against him. And then when people get on Legend for the first time, Dibble's like impossible for them to hit because there's no way you're sitting back on the cutter. But that is like 1% of players. Acuña, close. He's close. Haven't loved this card. I think he's very similar to Hank Aaron, which is how a lot of people are using him. They're using like, they're moving Hank to first and putting Acuña in right, or they're straight up swapping Hank Aaron for Acuña. And they're very similar. Acuña is better defensively just because of the speed, but Hank has better average power. But if this is a card you run for the rest of the year, then you're looking at basically a maxed out hitter, basically a maxed out fielder. So absolutely a perfect card. It just kind of depends on how much you like his swing. I personally enjoy it a lot, to where I think he is probably better than Hank, and he's similar to like that Ruth, Mickey, Trout level of hitter. Shohei probably gets some blowback for this one. Do not enjoy Shohei personally. We're gonna have to make some adjustments here. I'll be nice and put him here, and probably move John Kinsey down to top 50. And then, we're really gonna have to readjust. I feel fine with moving DeGrom up, but we'll have to make some other movements. Stan, the man, Musial, I think has an argument for top 10. He's very similar to Lou Gehrig. Some people will like him more than Gehrig. He has more of that traditional lefty swing, whereas Gehrig has the little like hand load. So just kind of depends on what you like. I loved Stan Musial last year when he had that World Series award. I think he's just the poor man's Babe Ruth. I think he is basically Babe Ruth for most people. So I think if you don't have Babe and you don't have Lou, you can get a lot of good use out of Stan Musial. I think there is a ton of good lefty first baseman. Tommy Edman, I think he's close to a top 10 card. I wouldn't hate calling him a top 10 card. When you look at him statistically, 125, 106 is a little bit low. I'll grant that. 125 power left, 97 power right, max out clutch. And he's a ridiculous fielder, honestly. 93 reaction. Not the fastest in the world, but the reaction does let you put him in like left, right, second, third. Even at short, he wouldn't be terrible, but he is only 5'10". So he's not going to get super dives like Ellie or like Tatis might at shortstop, or even Ernie Banks. But he is still a really good card. I think he's like similar to Ernie, where Ernie's like a maxed out hits and power guy. And just isn't that fast, but Tommy doesn't quite have the attributes that Ernie does, but he is a switch hitter, which you can't really measure a card being a switch hitter. So somebody's got to go up. I think it's probably Polanco. Like I said, I think he's that much better than like Soriano and Tatis, to where it's not really a conversation. Him and Tommy Edman's more of a conversation. I think I like Tommy Edman's swing more, to be honest. But Polanco just kind of blows him out the water stats-wise. If I pull it up right here, you'll see just how much better this Polanco card is. So you'll see that his contact left isn't as high, but as long as you're not on legend, you don't really care about this 10 plus 10 contact bump. Contact right's actually higher. Power left is slightly lower, but the power right is way higher. He's more of a vision guy, so you're gonna have a bigger perfect window there. And then Tommy's a slightly better fielder, so it's actually closer than I thought. But they are very similar overall. So somebody has to be moved up here. And I guess I'll readjust these tiers for the most part. I think Garver's probably my least favorite card in this tier. I don't mind that at all. So somebody's getting moved up here. It's not going to be Ventos. It's not going to be Stanton. Definitely not going to be Wright. I don't think you can make that argument for any of these relievers. I think it might be DeGrom, which top 20 for DeGrom seems very generous. I don't think he's that good of a pitcher. But I think everybody in this tier is clearly under everybody in this tier. And then everybody in this tier is clearly under everybody here. Other than Bo Bichette, if you really, really like Bo Bichette's swing, you could argue for him to be a top 10 card. We can go ahead and get this Darvish out the way. He's just another pitcher where I think he can give you some solid innings, but overall, not that crazy. And then I think I'm really happy with this list. Just this last player, like somebody has to get bumped up. I think for me it's McCutchen. I think he has my favorite swing out of this tier. I think he fits the meta really well, considering he's going to be hitting off a lefty. But if you want to argue that Chapman was the guy that should have got moved up, or that even DeGrom or Vientos were, I could definitely see all sides of that as well. And that is our top 50. Link will be in the description if you do want to go back over it, but it won't be ordered. So I'm going to scroll through this in the order that it is right now, because I think that I'm fairly happy with the order. Ernie, Edman, Bishop. I think these two are like just neck and neck. Like I view them as basically the same card. And then all of these guys, more or less. Now I think that's that tier done. Here I would probably stick with Biggio's definitely towards the top. I don't know if he is the top. Shohei's definitely at the bottom. I think I like Goldschmidt more than Utley. Utley more than Glaber. And if I had to rank this, it would probably be something like this. And then our final tier here at the top. I'm not going to do these pictures because it's just completely arbitrary and dependent on the difficulty you're on. I think Nick's one of my favorites out here. I think Torrey's one of my favorites. PK definitely. Ricky's definitely sitting at 50. 100%. Can't convince me otherwise. Cedric is probably worse than Brian Dozier. Simeon's close. Buck O'Neil close. I think I'd rather have Abreu than John Kinsey. And yeah, that's our top 50 list. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, if I missed anybody, feel free to leave a comment. I know that there was some hard cuts here. Like Michael Harris was kind of a hard cut, and there was a couple other guys I was really considering. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Till next time, peace.